Here's what I think. I keep thinking about the prophet stuff. What, why, how? What is going on there? Why would anyone want to be one of them? How can one get out of that? Well, I'm not here to say I've got answers to that. I have more questions, actually. Like, why did Moses, and I think there's a cosmological reason, I refuse to use the word theological. I hate theology. I detest theologians. I detest scholars. I detest experts. I'll say it right now. Why? Because so far on this planet, where have they driven us to? Not to a good place. Not to a good place. So, why do I hold them responsible? Because they are the days that are in caves. We always hear the echoes of their voices, and we never know who they are. That's who they are. But I will say who they are. I have that capacity. They are Genesis chapter 3, that is one. Genesis chapter 11, when you synthesize it with Deuteronomy 32, Psalms 82. Then finally do the Paul thing of Ephesians 6:12. Then we know that we have principalities. We have 70. You can do this backwards, synthesize. It's pretty easy, especially with created intelligence to help. So we have 1 plus 70, and those are the day. Our struggle is not against flesh and blood, okay? It's not against each other, really. Truly. So, back to the prophets and the job and such. Why did they all pretty much say, no thanks? Moses says, I'm not eloquent of speech. Now, back to those theologians and speculations, some say maybe he had a speech impediment, some kind of disability. What we do know from the history is that he was raised as the second son of Pharaoh, maybe even a favored son, but not his direct son lineage. He thought of his sister, if I get it correctly in my memory. So Moses says, no thanks, I mean, I'm not eloquent of speech. He didn't want the job. He left after he found himself enraged with the treatment of an overseer, slave, wannabe master beating on a fellow Jew. He couldn't contain himself. He did a mode of defense for that one that ended up in the offense of killing, probably not murder. So let's get it straight. So he bails on Egypt, and that's a long process, okay? He didn't even get to go into the land of milk and honey, Forget the whole Israel thing now in Palestine. It's Israel, the nation state, is a state of this. It's a synagogue of Satan, okay? Those people are not holy, that are taking the holy grounds of others who have lived in them for generations. Come on. But that doesn't negate the fact that Israel was reformed, so that's one of the huge signs, the reformation of Israel from scattered all over the planet that happened. But are the people in line with God? Well, obviously no. Back to who they are and Moses, and he didn't get to go there because he hit the rock instead of just proclaiming. He hit it twice, I think. I would have hit it 3 times. Reluctant and then some, but pleading for the people at one point because God said he was going to kill them all, and says, please don't do that. I mean, he was an intercessor for them. Then there's Jonah, who's always my favorite. I mean, come on. That guy really did it well. He said, no thanks. Let the Ninevites just suffer whatever. What kind of a job is it to be a prophet? They always hate you. You're delivering a message that you've been bad and you're all fucked up and you better change or bad things are going to happen. I'm just saying. No thank you, says Jonah. No thanks. I'll get on a ship. I'll get away from this god aura. And I'll just sail the Mediterranean, and I'll pay for a fare, and I'll sleep underneath the belly, not of the whale, of the ship. Storm comes, they're going to die. A little known fact is that practically no mariners, no seamen knew how to swim. That's a paradox. That's a calamity waiting to happen. It was going to happen on the Mediterranean Sea. They'll start to check, everyone does when you're on the verge of death. What have I done wrong? Do I need to confess? Looking at each other, the other one's blank, and we're just all pale white, even if they're brown. They were white, and the spray on their faces. And then they decided, because they had actually asked each other face to face, locked eye to eye, maybe just one eye, since I said eye. And no, I didn't have a problem with any god that I know of, said the rest. And then they go downstairs, and sleeping Jonah, they wake him up and they rouse him and they say, hey, do you have a problem with anyone, especially a big one, like one with a god in front of his name or her name or whatever? Jonah goes, yeah, that's me. Throws them off, calms the waves, swallowed by a whale, spit up on the beach. The patience of Job. Job was not patient, let's be clear. He's not a prophet, well, he kind of is, actually. The whole story of Job is not about his patience. He was not a patient man. I can prove that. How? Because he was a CEO of a huge conglomerate based in the land of Uz. He was the greatest man of all of the East. That is implications of being successful, not just he got propped up, And it says in Job right away, Job 1, whatever, to 3, and it says that he had, watch this, 7,000 sheep. Wow, that's a lot of ba'a. And he had 3,000 camels. That's a lot of camels to feed. And plus, I don't know if camels do it, but llamas spit in your eye. Okay? I think camels do too. And then he had 500 oxen, and he had 500 she-asses, which are roughly equivalent. They do different functions because of their physiques. Okay? But the fact that it was 500 and 500, and these are she-asses, she-donkeys, that is feminine right there. He had 7 sons and 3 daughters lined up with the sheep, 7,000. Those boys weren't doing too well, more like followers of each other. They would party every day. His father, Job, was doing the burnt offerings in the morning, saying, please, those boys, they're probably turning their hearts from you, if not saying it. And there they were. It says in Job that they were circulating, they were going from house to house of theirs, far from the father's enterprise of the not patient Job. And partying, basically, that's what it says. Feasting and drinking. Sometimes they'd invite their 3 sisters over. Well, the 3 sisters were the ones who were the engines. Think of the 3,000 camels. They were the ones, not like the sheep. They were the stewards of the camels. They were the logistics, the brains, the help behind and with their father, Job, in his huge business. You do not have 3,000 camels because you want a big petting zoo when they might spit in your eye. Okay? This was an enterprise that crossed the continent. That's how big Job was. He was not about being patient and slow. I mean, he was a ready, fire, aim man. That's clear as snow. And snow's not clear, though. ice sometimes. So I'm mentioning Job because, I don't know, he is a prophet. How do I know? So he talks about Leviathan. He is the absolute expert on Leviathan. There's no reason at all for that book to have a whole chapter, 41, about Behemoth and Leviathan. Actually, they're different chapters. My kitties are making noise back here, doing thing 1, thing 2 stuff, Tiger and Woody, okay? And then there's Liger, the grandfather. But back to the prophets, I mean, most of them were reluctant. Elijah, no. Malachi, no. But a ton of them were like, hey, God, do you have any other job? Maybe I could do the Joseph thing. That would be cool. You know, trying to forget the first part of the Joseph story, which was that he was betrayed by his blood brothers. They thought better than killing him. So they thought, well, let's just sell him for slavery and he'll get shipped away to Egypt or whatever. We take his coat and then blame it on some kind of, wild animal or whatever. So, but then Joseph is in a shitty slave situation. The Pharaoh has his dreams. No one can solve him in his court of jesters, his prophets there. So they heard of this Joseph who's in the dungeons who might understand the dream. And in all candor, for all of us, when we know what the dream was of the Pharaoh, it's so easy to see, you can't unsee it. 7 fat cows, 7 skinny cows. All right, 7 years of abundance, 7 years of famine. Well, I mean, Joseph was the one who declared it with certainty. Pharaoh puts him in charge of accumulating. So I'm mentioning him because he was a prophet who received dreams, but he received the dreams of others, and then he would speak for God and help that dreamer and help the community, in this case, who was the Pharaoh, who saw his anointing, who honored that. He did. I mean, he made Joseph from the dungeons his right-hand man, who could save his family later that betrayed him. And he did it in such a coy way. He didn't let his brothers know that they were speaking to the brother that they sold before. Jeremiah, Joel, Isaiah, Ezekiel. Isaiah, no one even believed him anything he said during his lifetime. Isn't that a bummer? That's like being this little doodle artist, and you like to do it, you think it looks cool, and no one thinks it's anything but scratches on wasted paper, and then after you die posthumously, you find out you're the doodle king. Well, that's what happened to Isaiah in his prophethood. Never realized how incredible he was in actuality and factuality. I mean, tell me where the glamour is. I mean, I really, anyone who would claim that they are a prophet, well, firstly, they should have their heads examined, not for maybe hearing from God, maybe, but really have their heads examined for even considering the job. That's what I think. Elijah, I already mentioned him. I like his story. That guy didn't take shit from anyone. Somehow he'd get from one place to another faster than the fastest chariots. In fact, almost as fast as the wind, if the wind was blowing 60 miles an hour fast. That's how fast he could outrun chariots. That was proven. At the end, we see some transportation maybe he was using the whole time. Chariots of fire Everyone says like these angels came down and then did it and scooped him up. Hell, he knew it was going to happen. He told Elijah, Elijah, his acolyte, who wanted to follow him, and he goes, look, I'm going to be leaving soon. Okay, heads up, I gotta go. Elijah says, well, I would like to follow you. And he goes, well, you can't go where I'm going, but I'll make a deal for you and with you. If you stay in my stead, what would you want from God? Well, that's easy, Elijah says. I want double portions. Look, I'm just going to make it simple. Double portions and I'm in. So Elijah actually had a really good deal with the essay. Double portion, sounds good. So Elijah told him, okay, you have to watch when I leave. Okay, fine. Thinking he's just going to walk away, maybe run, disappear around the corner. Shit, he never thought he was going to see Elijah, the then king of the elements he's the king elemental, because mentally he's aligned with God so closely, so perfectly aligned, that he was the Neo in The Matrix before the movie The Matrix came in 1999. He was like 999 years before, or BCE. The numbers are close. So basically, that guy started controlling the elements, plain and simple. Like closing the heavens, I can do that. Make fire come from heaven, douse it all you want, even though we have a shortage of water because I closed up the heavens. Don't forget that. 450 prophets of Baal dancing crazy, cutting yourselves up. Shit. Go ahead. Hours. Hot sun. Enjoy it. I'm going in the shade. So Elijah does that. Lets them do all their work until they're so exhausted. Those 450 can't, do their thing anymore, and nothing happens to their altar. No fire. No. Elijah says, douse it. And they get all the water. I think it was 12 times, actually. They're dousing his altar. I don't even know who they are, by the way. But, in this case. And then when they're done, he goes, okay, move away. Thing goes up in fucking flames, man. Look, people like, oh, the hand of God, Oh, yeah, the angels took him. Oh, how he outrun the chariot and the angel speed, we don't know. Just, God transported him, but we're not going to think about it. Look, if you think about it, Occam's razor says the guy was Neo, and the Matrix didn't apply to him. He had alignment with God I Am, and that gave him the capacity to defy gravity, to defy physics as we know them, but still to work within physics. We just don't know how. Science has a real place in our lives because everything's an apex. The ultimate at the top is love, to be clear. Truth, science, everything apexes. Back to Elijah. Okay, so he's doing all this stuff, right? And then he meets the king, I don't know the order here, but King Ahab and the Queen Jezebel. Hello. She is the gnarliest ever, except for the one coming, the harlot of Babylon. Okay? Probably the same spirit. Same small g of the 70 rebels from the Tower of Babel schism. So, probably ISIS, actually. So, on that, he's in their city. I forget if it's Babylon or Jerusalem. I just forget. And she puts out an edict, a decree, kill Elijah. I don't care what it takes. I don't care where he's at. I don't kill anyone who even looks like him, probably. So Elijah has, a head on his shoulders that he doesn't want to lose. And he says to himself, I'm out of here, man. I mean, that is insane. I got to get out. So he leaves the city. And yet that was not the plan that God had. He didn't check with God. So he gets sidelined. You go in the desert, it's going to be hot. And I'll give you a little brook, and I'll send some food to you by ravens. And I'm thinking, birds, like a trickling little brook thing. It's hot. And the birds are coming, regurgitating like they do for their babies. But they were ravens, so that tells a different story. And I think it ended up being a nice kind of mirage place of existence, a timeout where Elijah could recoup himself and recuperate and get his mind straight, but not such a place of punishment. No, it's probably pretty damn nice. And and the ravens were like Grab or Uber or Didi or whatever, food delivery. Good food, twice a day. The raven's so smart, proven scientifically, that they can play games even with humans. So Elijah and the ravens, and nice mirage kind of situation, all shady and nice babbling brook. So that turned out to be pretty good, but it doesn't seem so in the book. I call it prophet treatment. And what did Jesus have to say about that? And I guess in a way we can wrap it up right here. He goes, hey, a prophet is never accepted or liked even in his hometown. And not only that, there's nowhere he gets to lie his head. Okay, that's the way it works. You have no friends, practically. Very little family. I mean, Jesus had some that were really close, thank God. In general, that was actually an exception. The Jesus community that he created, the conglomeration of women having positions equal to men, and in fact Mary Magdalene having more because she was more receptive to the true messages of Jesus Christ, would speak to him and prophet, was intended to be the leader of the church, unquestionably. Even the men knew that. Pete is not a rock. He was a cock 3 times over, quite clearly, that's scriptural. If you think that I'm going on some kind of tangent, I'm going to come back to where do you lay your head as a prophet tangent. Like, the truth is that it's really simple to see Peter did emerge as the leader post-ascension. It is really true that right before Christ was crucified, he said, "Get thee behind me, Satan," to the totality, the body of Peter. Then even after that, he said, "Satan has asked me to sift you like wheat and chaff." So that says a lot about the position of Peter toward the end of Jesus' life, and then the ascension, and then the Acts will show, and then there's even the ascension that he did amongst the men in particular, called out by Paul for being so spectacularly hypocritical, eating with the uncircumcised and feasting with them until Paul's arrival, then changing all of a sudden. So Peter, P.T., was a pig. And let me be more clear and just say this, because it screams through history. Where are the Marys Where are the Marys? There were 4. They did not hide at all when the cocks crowed. Not at all. They were on the streets of Jerusalem wailing and calling out the names of Jesus Christ, Son of God incarnate, weeping and mourning, proclaiming his name, while P.T. was cowering, afraid of the cockcrow or being named. So here's the indictment. Where were the Marys post-ascension when Peter was in charge? They disappeared. The Mother Mary, thank God she was entrusted to the beloved John. And what happened also was the Mary Magdalene got pushed aside by Peter, actually insinuating that Jesus Christ and her had sex. That's quite true. You can see it in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene and also in the Gospel of Philip as a subset of support. So that was a community of exception. It was exceptional. Well, Jesus congregated them together and post his resurrection before ascension. Women had a place of honor. Women had a place esteemed. Women were more than equals because they were more receptive, quite literally. So, where does the prophet lie his head? Well, I feel fortunate because I have a bed. Sincerely. That's where I lie my head. Thank God.